Welcome back. You're watching HFO-TV. HFO-TV is co-sponsored by J.R. Johnson LLC, specialists in multifamily restoration and repair work. Gantry Incorporated, the nation's largest independent mortgage banking firm. Butler Exchange Group, offering 1031 tax-free exchange services. And Forensic Building Consultants, experts in the diagnosis, repair, and preservation of multifamily assets.
Welcome back to HFO-TV. This is Greg Frick, partner at HFO Investment Real Estate. Today we're going to have a Zoom meeting with Josh Lenher. He's the Oregon State Economist. We've had him on many times before, and we thought it'd be a good time to bring him in and talk a little bit about what's going on. There's a lot of changes we've had in the last, a lot of changes since we've had, 2022's rolled in. So, Josh, thanks for taking time out of your busy day and kind of update everybody. I know we've had between inflation and, possible war, we were going to talk originally about housing supply and affordability. I think we'll get to that, but maybe you can shine some light on kind of overall what you're seeing and kind of the change of, where we've been. We had this great run for, longest expansion in history, and now it kind of come to a screeching halt, COVID and other items. Maybe shine some light onto that.
Yeah, you're right. First of all, it's great to be back, right? Chatting with you, Greg. I think we had the longest economic expansion we'd ever seen in U.S. history. And by the end of it, so 2017, 18, 19, things start to get really good. We finally started to see really good income growth in a low inflation environment. And then COVID threw a wrench in all of that. And I think, today we have a booming economy, but it's an inflationary boom. It's something we haven't seen before. It creates its own set of challenges, that something like the inflation we haven't seen in 2 generations. But, overall, the good news continues to outweigh the bad news. Things are improving. Employment's up, income's up. And we have certainly a bout of inflation that needs to be tamed and create some issues. But by and large, things are still moving up and to the right, but just certainly different than what we saw last decade.
And with people that, again, like you said, it's been a couple decades since we've seen this kind of inflation. I mean, a lot of people have not gone through this and don't, they hear stories from their parents or their grandparents about what it was like. I mean, how do you, when somebody asks you as a state economist, geez, what is it and, what's it going to do? How do you answer that to somebody that hasn't been through that before?
Yeah, so inflation is, broadly speaking, it's too many dollars chasing too few goods. And that's exactly what we have right now, right? Like household balance sheets, the consumer, household incomes, finance, everything is really, really strong right now. So strongest probably we've certainly seen in quite some time, right? We have current income is booming. Wages are up tremendously. We have accumulated savings overall from the pandemic with the recovery rebates. A lot of people just kind of stocked those away. And then we didn't go on vacation. So we were saving money and we got an influx of cash. And then we have record asset markets. And the stock market's down, 10-ish% so far this year, but it's certainly up over the last 2 years. And then record setting housing wealth. And you put all those things together, household finances are really strong. And so we're trying to spend some of it. And we're sitting at home, clicking on the internet, having stuff shipped to our door more than we used to. And we're not going out to eat quite as much or on vacation. So we have a lot of money. It's being spent mostly on physical goods, or more on physical goods than we've seen in quite some time. And we're just not able to produce as much. We're setting records. Our production numbers, our import numbers, our logistics, our supply chain are moving record products. It's just not enough to keep up with the pace of demand. So we really kind of are in that situation where we have too many dollars chasing too few goods, and therefore it's a classic recipe for prices to rise.
Do you think you'll see a shift in maybe spending from hard goods to more, maybe travel or things like that? I mean, when people were stuck in their house with COVID, like you said, shipping to their house, are there signs of that happening where maybe it alleviates, I'm not saying get rid of inflation, but maybe alleviates some of the inflationary pressure on, hard goods in that?
Yeah, I think that's certainly the baseline outlook. Now, it's not, the consensus isn't really tight here. What we've seen so far is kind of a stalling out in the good sales. Like we've kind of we took a level shift up and we're kind of maintaining that at the same time as we're bringing back those service spending. So like leisure travel, if we look at like leisure travel, so going on airplanes for vacations, hotel occupancy, those sort of things are getting back to pretty normal. It's the business travel that's the big problem for that sector.
For that sector, right?
Yeah, it's not so much just you and me going on a trip. It's the lack of corporate events, and so we're raising our service spending and maintaining that strength on the good side. Now going forward, I think that same pattern will continue, and so that should help with the inflation a little bit. Like used car prices can't go up another 40%. They're up 40% today. Like they're not going to go up 40% every year or two moving forward. So I think we'll see some improvements there, and that's certainly the baseline outlook. But to the extent that we don't, then we might be in a different inflationary regime.
Okay. Now I know we're going to talk about housing, and everybody's, that's been a topic we've discussed for the last 10 years at least. Now we're seeing numbers about the underbuilt delivery of housing, and some of that we can talk about. Bureaucratic legislation, red tape, but there's also now inflationary pressures on the cost of bringing new housing. What are you guys forecasting for immigration, and then kind of the effect that's going to have on the affordability component and, in housing in general?
Yeah, so our housing forecast is very much a demand-driven side. We're not really looking at the supply constraints, or we identify them, but we're not really factoring them into our outlook, so to speak. I know they're binding, but we're not saying we're only going to produce so many units of housing, about 21,000, 22,000 a year in Oregon, not because we're out of land, but that's because that's kind of where that population growth number is. So we're looking for a solid rebound in population growth, migration this year and next, about 35,000 net migrants moving into Oregon. Now the gross flows are a lot larger. Like we're talking 180, 200,000 people, at least moving in. And then, 150,000 people moving out. Like these are big numbers of people shifting
Which
around.
is not new. That's not normal, right, Josh? It's smaller on both sides, right?
Well, it's increased with a larger population. I would say the pandemic has certainly thrown a wrench into that, right? So counter the conventional wisdom, there is no pandemic migration boom in Oregon. Right? We saw a slowdown in population growth in 2020, and then we saw an even slower 2021 population growth number. And so people didn't really pack up and move to Oregon. And in large part, we just think it's a recession. Like we normally see people hunker down in recessions, right. But that wasn't necessarily the case in Idaho and Montana, who did see an acceleration of population growth. The West Coast did not. The Intermountain West did see that.
Okay. So, but you're projecting the next couple of years kind of coming back to that net 30, 35,000 of immigration into the state.
That's right. Yeah, we think both because it's normally what we see in economic expansions, an acceleration in the migration. And then also the best leading indicator for population growth is surrender driver's license at the DMV. When you move to another state, you have to give them your old one, and then they give you back the new one. And those they've turned up for the last 9 months or so.
And is it changing in the state where, previous to COVID, Portland metropolitan was the big driver of the population growth, the job growth within the city, which was kind of interesting, or Multnomah County. Is that continuing, or are we seeing it spread across now more different regions of the state?
I think it's really hard to know right now. So a lot of this demographic data comes out with such a lag, right? Like We're going to get 2022 population estimates around Thanksgiving, so at the end of the year. And so it'll be a little harder to know. I do think we'll certainly see some increased numbers, probably in the suburban markets, whether it's outside of Portland entirely, the Portland metro area. I'm not so sure, right? I mean, Central Oregon, the Bend market, like they've been booming for over a generation now. So it's hard to say, and then other places like Hood River, that's also been growing quickly and seeing high home prices and the like, there really are hemmed in, geographically with the river and then the scenic area and the gorge. Right. Yeah, like they are confined much more so than a lot of other places. So it'll be hard to know. I do think the housing affordability problems will probably push people to secondary markets. So it's going to be a benefit to Salem and Eugene, right, and Spokane and Coeur d'Alene and all those sort of other secondary markets, and at the expense of the Portlands and Seattles of the world.
Yeah, no, we're seeing that on the investment side, where we see investment dollars going to some of these secondary markets. Now, again, it's not that we're thinking that we're going to see, big corrections within Portland. It's just, to get that, there's more opportunities there, and they think there'll be some growth. I mean, what we've talked about with you guys don't really track supply, which is a hard thing to track a little bit on delivery of new, because they're so far, in the future. But if we're looking at things slowing down on the supply side, but demand still coming in, I think we'll see some continued, growth in the rents and in the costs, so to speak.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, we've seen a big slowdown, particularly in multifamily rental units in recent years. And how much of that is tied to the inclusionary housing policy from the city of Portland, and more broadly is construction did dry up. People were concerned that the cities were going to die from COVID and it's going to be all about the suburban markets. There's truth somewhere in the middle. I'm not expecting the city to really suffer forever, but it's certainly been a little bit less attractive for a variety of reasons in the last couple of years.
So being a state economist, and now we're kind of in an election year, I mean, are you being asked from state agencies and, to kind of give an outlook? Because it's such uncharted territory for a lot of people coming out of COVID and, like I said, the inflationary pressure. I mean, what are they asking, or what are they trying to have you educate them on and in looking at forward and policies and, things like, how do they address these things that we've never seen before?
Yeah, so the hard part is on the spending side. How do you manage these wage increases and the cost increases of all the supplies and services that you buy or provide to Oregonians? That's really the big challenge, and luckily that's not what the role of our office is. We work on the revenue side of things, and in an inflationary boom, it means revenues are going up a lot faster than anticipated. Because again, if inflation's at 8%, your boss gives you a 5% wage increase, you're going to be like, I need 8% because I don't want my purchasing power to erode. And so we've seen a big increase in wages. We've seen a big increase in personal income tax payments. And then kind of conversely, relative to a traditional recessionary environment, we saw non-wage incomes boom. Corporate profits are at record levels. The stock market was certainly up for over the 2 years. Capital gains are up. So normally we see these things correct, and it takes maybe a couple of years to get back. We had maybe like a 1 month correction in the stock market, back in the initial shutdown period, and that's about it.
So everything goes. It's kind of, like I said, it was heated up, and there was not. It felt like we were coming in, going into something, a recession, but it's just like you said, economic-wise, from the incomes and all that really wasn't the case. You couldn't spend any money anywhere because things weren't open, so your net worth is going up. So, which is an interesting way to look at it. So, from a housing standpoint, I mean, are you thinking there's at some point, as we get inflationary pressures, that offsets the added cost of building, from materials and all that, and maybe we'll see starts coming back? And kind of what's your outlook from an economist standpoint?
So our outlook is more the status quo, right? We know we've underbuilt housing by, the latest research shows 111,000 units. That's like 5 years of production. So in the last 20 to 25 years, we've underbuilt by 5 full years. Like, it's a huge number, and that helps with the increased cost pressures on the housing market. Like where the housing and affordability problems we have in Portland, in Salem, in Bend, in Pendleton, in Ontario, everywhere, is worse at every single point along the distribution than it is in a lot of other markets, right? It's not just overburden for our low income neighbors. It is, but it's not just that. It's our middle income and our high income neighbors.
So it hits all stratas.
Yep, exactly. Across the entire distribution, across the entire board, we have worse affordability than a lot of other markets, except for maybe California. So it's hard to think that some of these constraints we're seeing in terms of actual outright land acquisition, land development to turn them into buildable lots once they're available for development, actually getting them ready, permitting processes, and then the workforce to actually build more units. It's hard to think that any of these things are going to turn on a dime.
Right.
And so normally I tend to think myself more optimistic on the housing market. I think we can do this. I think we can build more units when the demand is there. But we don't really have a correction or an oversupply built into our forecast. It's really more the status quo, staying on the hamster wheel we're on. So until those things change, until we see more land development, more permits, and a larger workforce to build, it's hard to think that we'll see a really big increase in housing starts. So we kind of have a 5 to 10% increase in our forecast in the years ahead, and that's just kind of keeping with the population growth.
And are you sensing, like I said, you're down in Salem, are you sensing that message is coming through from, to elected officials and people that are, setting policy in place, that the status quo is not going to, we're not going to be able to build our way out of it if we keep everything the same, regardless of, the inflationary. Are you sensing that there's maybe they're recognizing like, hey, wait a minute, things need to change?
Yeah, I think so. I think certainly a few years ago, we saw a flurry of activity on the legislative side, right? We saw House Bill 2001, which is the duplex legalization or elimination of single family only zoning, depending on how you want to talk about it. So that that will help with supply over the long run. We have a regional housing needs analysis called House Bill 2003 from a few years ago that's going to help with land and zoning capacity at the city and regional level, and realizing that, like, if there's a bunch of jobs in Beaverton, that King City, Tigard, Hillsborough, like that's the same housing market, right? Depending, so like making sure that those are all rowing in the same direction. So I think those will be, I should say, market-based policy that should help. I think what we've also seen is a concerted effort to work on the capital A affordable housing. And we saw it in the most recent legislative session this year is a big increase in public funding for subsidized units. It's a start, right? Like, I mean, the need is so great, but it's certainly a start.
Yeah, and if we wait for the things to get built, it's going to be too long. There's got to be different avenues to get funds out to help, and like I said, get some of the barriers down to get more construction going. So
I would say the things that we've done, or at least the things that have passed, are kind of like base level stuff. They're necessary but not sufficient conditions to see the increased production. That they're allowing for more production. Now we just got to go out and actually do it.
Right. Well, I want to thank you for taking the time. I know you're really busy. This is a interesting time, and I'm sure we'll check back with you, and we'll see what happens as we go through this with the inflation, and do things calm down, as you said, on the supply side and on the housing side, but also on goods and services. So I want to thank you again for taking the time to speak to our audience, and we'll see you next time on HFO-TV.
Our entire office specializes in multifamily real estate, making HFO the largest multifamily brokerage in the Pacific Northwest. Your success is our passion. Build your legacy with HFO. Call 503-241-5541 or visit our website at hfore.com for more information.